Hello and welcome to Mr. C's presentation on finding the lowest common denominator. Yes, friends, you're going to be using fractions and multiples as well as your knowledge of equivalent fractions like a boss. Okay, we're going to not only find the lowest common denominators, but I'm going to talk about a few ways that you're about to start using them. I brought a friend. I brought another friend. You'll meet him again in a moment. But let's just go ahead and get right into this. We're going to talk about why this is important. And there's a couple of good reasons. We're going to start out with the fact that if you want to add and subtract fractions, especially with different denominators, you have to know how to create equivalents that have the same denominator. I'm going to kick it to my Spanish correspondent, Eduardo. Go ahead.
Nos ayuda a sumar y restar fracciones.
Very good. Secondly, it's going to help us to compare fraction size. If these fractions have the same denominators, you'll know which one is larger and smaller very easily.
Nos ayuda a comparar fracciones.
That's right. Thirdly, you're going to use this lots and lots and lots in the next steps of fraction work.
Lo vas a usar muchas veces en tu trabajo.
Very good. Okay, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and see this. Okay, you're going to see it worded like this sometimes, but occasionally it's going to be worded different ways, or you're going to find LCDs or lowest common denominators in other ways. Okay, so what we're going to do is convert the following fractions. Convert means change, right? We're going to find equivalents so that they have the lowest common denominator. Go ahead and translate that for me, Eduardo.
Convierte las fracciones para que tengan el menor common denominator.
Okay, very good. All right, everybody say goodbye to our Spanish correspondent. We're going to bring in our math specialist, Daniel. He's chomping at the bit. He's going to answer some questions for us and help us to see how this stuff works. Okay, so these are the first two fractions that we're going to look at. We're going to look at 1/2, and you know me, I love writing them upright, and we're going to look at 1/3. Okay, now the first question that you're going to ask yourself, and the first question that I'm going to ask Daniel is, Daniel, do 2 and 3, notice how I'm talking about the denominators, do the denominators 2 and 3 share any factors?
No.
No. Okay, there's no number that goes into 2 that also goes into 3, except for 1, and 1 never counts when you're talking about fractions. Okay, so then the next thing you're going to ask is, what's the lowest multiple that both 2 and 3 share? Do you know the answer to that, Daniel?
Yep.
What is it?
6.
It is 6. Okay, so 2 and 3 both share a multiple, or, well, they share many multiples, but the lowest one, the smallest one that they share, is 6. Okay, so we're going to make these fractions equivalent. So, Daniel, 2 times what equals 6?
2 times 3.
Correct. So what's 1 times 3?
1 times 3 is 3.
Correct. So you can see 1/2 is equivalent to 3/6. We've gone through the process. If you don't know how to find equivalent fractions, you're watching the wrong lesson. You need to figure out how to do that first and then come back and learn with us right here. All right, Daniel, so 3 times what equals 6?
2.
Okay, and then what is 1 times 2?
1 times 2 is 2.
Correct. Okay, so look, we did it. We've converted these fractions, 1/2 and 1/3, so that they have and they share a denominator, 6/6. Okay, 1/2 is equivalent to 3/6, and 1/3 is equivalent to 2/6. Let's take it a step further. Daniel, which one of these fractions is larger, 3/6 or 2/6?
3/6.
Correct. 3/6 is larger. So then if I were to ask you what's larger, 1/2 or 1/3, what would you say?
1/2.
Yeah, see? You can take it a step further and start to compare fractions. Okay, so let's do one more. This one's going to be a little more difficult. I loaded this one so that there's common factors, and factors are always more difficult. I'm going to go ahead and convert these so that they're standing upright. That's how you're usually going to see fractions. That's how I write them whenever I'm, working with them on paper and whatnot. All right, now Daniel, this one's a little more difficult. Is there a common factor, or I should say, what's the smallest common factor that both 32 and 24 share?
2.
2, very good. So if we were going to convert this 32 into 2, right? I'm not going to write it because it's wrong. What would I divide 32 by to get to 2?
16.
16, good. Can I divide 8 by 16?
No.
No, you can't. So, okay, 2 is not going to be the one that we go with. What's the next smallest factor that both 32 and 24 share?
4.
4. Okay, so what would I divide 32 by to get to 4?
8.
8. And can I divide 8 by 8?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay, good. Now let's do the same thing over here. What would I divide 24 by to get to 4?
6.
6. And can I divide 12 by 6?
Yes.
Yes. So that is going to be our LCD. That's going to be our lowest common denominator. See how I checked it before I actually went through and did it? All right, so 32 divided by what equals 4?
8.
Good. And what's 8 divided by 8?
1.
Correct. Okay, so 8/32 is equivalent to 1/4. Okay, and what am I going to divide 24 by to get to 4?
6.
And what's 12 divided by 6?
3. Wait, no.
Sorry, we're all human, Daniel. 2, very good. It's 2. And 12/24 is equivalent to 2/4. All right, let's take it a step further. Tell me which one's larger, 1/4 or 2/4?
2/4.
Correct. So then, with your knowledge of equivalent fractions, what's larger, 8/32 or 12/24?
12/24.
Very good. You see? Do you see how we've used these LCDs, these low common denominators, to actually compare fraction size? Right? You may not have known which was larger, 8/32 or 12/24, but now we do, because we found common denominators, which lets us see very quickly which one's larger. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Everyone say goodbye, Daniel. Goodbye, Daniel. Because we are very quickly going to talk about what we learn. And I'm going to bring back in my Spanish correspondent, Eduardo. Everyone say hello, Eduardo. Hola, Eduardo. Okay? And we're going to go over what we learned. First, factors and multiples are still useful, and they're going to continue to be useful forever. So if you haven't mastered factors and multiples yet, go back and do that. Sorry, go ahead.
Factors and multiples todavía sirven.
Very good. Second thing that we learned, finding equivalent fractions is useful when finding common denominators. If you don't know equivalent fractions, or I should say if you know how to find equivalent fractions, well, that's part of the process of finding common denominators.
Finding equivalent fractions is usado cuando encontrando common denominators.
Very good. Okay. We also learned that this is going to help when adding and subtracting fractions.
Esto te va a ayudar para cuando sumando y restando fracciones.
Right, because you know how to add fractions that have the same denominator. That's the last thing you learned. So now you know how to change them so that they have the same denominator even when they don't, right? And that's going to help us to add and subtract. Okay, so in order to become masters of this, we have to try this, okay? So I'm going to challenge you to not only convert the following fractions so that they have the lowest common denominators, but also to show which ones are larger. Okay, compare them. Which one's larger, 1/8 or 1/4? Okay, first convert them to have the same denominator, and then tell me which one's larger. The second two fractions are 4/12 and 2/3. And then finally, the final problem is 2/7 and 3/10. Okay? This might be kind of a difficult process, but after you play with it for a little while, it's really not that bad. You got to play with it until you've mastered it. And then we're going to start adding and subtracting these fractions, which is all over all sorts of tests and actually is all over in real life. Okay, so master this before you move on. I hope this helped. Say goodbye, guys.
Goodbye. Bye.
You're supposed to say adios.
Hola.
Yeah.
Oh, adios.
Adios.
Hola. I mean, adios.